I never thought buying a quiet lakeside property in a small WA community would turn into a full-blown federal sting operation. But that's exactly what happened when Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our neighborhood WA, decided that my guest cabin should be hers to loan out whenever she pleased, starting with her cousin's week-long visit in the summer. And from the very first day I moved in, she had been on me about everything. The color of my mailbox, the type of flowers in my front garden, the way I parked my truck slightly angled in my own driveway. But I tolerated her nonsense because I wanted peace, until she crossed the line with my guest cabin, which wasn't really a guest cabin at all but something far more serious, though no one in the community knew it. You see, when I bought the property, the realtor casually mentioned that the small rustic-looking cabin near the tree line was a utility structure, and left it at that. But when I explored it, I realized it had reinforced walls, soundproofing, and equipment that looked nothing like what a normal cabin would have. And within a week 2 men in suits approached me, flashed their FBI credentials, and explained that the cabin was actually a safe house tied into ongoing investigations, and that my only role as the homeowner was to never let anyone near it, never disclose its true purpose, and pretend it was simply unused guest space. And though it freaked me out at first, they reassured me that they had surveillance, tight control, and that my cooperation would make me a patriotic landlord. So I agreed, thinking it would be an occasional quiet arrangement with nothing dramatic. But then Karen came knocking, literally and figuratively, insisting that since my guest cabin was just sitting there, while other neighbors sometimes used their properties for visitors, I should let her cousin stay there. And when I politely refused, she launched into one of her infamous WA tirades about community spirit and wasted resources, threatening to file complaints about my lawn, my lights, even the color of my shutters, all of which were perfectly within code. But she loved using fear and paperwork to get her way, and I stood firm, saying simply, "It's not available," which only fueled her determination. And over the next few days she rallied other board members, gossiping that I was selfish and unneighborly, until one night I caught her snooping around the cabin with a flashlight, rattling the doorknob and trying to peek inside the windows. And when I confronted her, she said smugly, "If you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't mind me checking," which made my stomach knot because inside that cabin were files, communications gear, and who knew what else from the bureau. So I warned her to stay off my property or I'd call the sheriff, but she laughed in my face, muttering that I couldn't keep secrets from the WA. And that's when things spiraled, because the very next day 2 FBI agents showed up, not in suits this time but in plain clothes, asking if anyone had been snooping near the cabin. And when I described Karen, their expressions hardened, and they reminded me under no circumstances could she or anyone else gain entry, as there was sensitive material that could compromise lives, which chilled me. So I doubled down on security, putting up motion lights and cameras, which only made Karen angrier. And then the day came when her cousin actually arrived, bags in hand, while Karen marched him right up my driveway, declaring, "The cabin is ready, you just need to hand over the key." And when I refused yet again, she exploded, shouting in front of half the neighborhood that I was hoarding space, calling me a fraud homeowner, and that she would escalate this to the WA board immediately. But what she didn't realize was that 2 black SUVs had parked a block away, watching everything. And as Karen continued screaming, her cousin awkwardly tried to calm her. But before he could, 3 men in tactical gear emerged silently from the shadows near the cabin, and the look on Karen's face went from triumph to horror as they identified themselves as federal agents and began questioning her cousin on the spot. Because it turned out, twist number 1, that her cousin wasn't just an innocent visitor but was already under surveillance as a suspected money launderer tied to an international network. And Karen had unknowingly tried to place him directly into an FBI-controlled location, essentially blowing their cover and triggering an emergency response. And I watched as the cousin stammered, denied, and then was quietly handcuffed and escorted into one of the SUVs, while Karen shrieked that it was all a mistake, demanding to speak to their supervisor, insisting she had rights as WA president. And the agents ignored her until one finally leaned down and whispered something in her ear that made her go pale and sit down on the curb, silent for the first time since I'd met her. And I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But the chaos had only begun, because 2 days later Karen filed a lawsuit against me and the WA, claiming I had colluded with federal agents to entrap her cousin. And while her complaint was laughable on paper, it stirred up massive drama in the neighborhood, with half the residents gossiping that I must be involved with the feds, while others speculated I was running some secret government program, which of course I couldn't confirm or deny, leaving me stuck in the crossfire of paranoia. And just when I thought the storm might settle, another twist came. Late one night as I was locking up, I noticed headlights pulling into Karen's driveway, and out stepped two unfamiliar men who didn't look like family, and something about the way they scanned the street gave me chills, so I called the FBI contact number they'd given me, and within 20 minutes agents swarmed the area, revealing that Karen, furious at her humiliation, had actually reached out to one of her cousins, business associates, to expose me in the safe house, not realizing she was walking straight into the jaws of a federal sting. And in a surreal sequence of events, my quiet neighborhood turned into a raid zone, with Karen being taken away screaming about abuse of power, the two men arrested on conspiracy charges, and neighbors peeking through blinds in shock. And when the dust settled, the Bureau quietly thanked me, offered some reassurances, and even relocated some of their operations elsewhere to keep things discreet. But the reputation stuck, and for months afterward people whispered about me as the guy with the FBI cabin, while Karen, now facing charges of obstruction and conspiracy, was barred from WA leadership, though she still occasionally sent bitter letters through her lawyer, insisting I had ruined her life, when in reality, her own arrogance had led her to try and commandeer something far beyond her comprehension. And I often think back to that first moment she demanded the cabin, how smug she looked believing her WA power was absolute, and how little she knew that the rustic little structure she coveted was not a guest cabin at all but a hidden node in a sprawling federal web. And though I sometimes wish I could tell my neighbors the full truth to clear the air, I've learned to live with the mystery, smiling whenever someone hints that I must be ex-military, or deep state, because the reality is far stranger, and it all started because Karen, the WA tyrant, wanted to play queen of the neighborhood. Never realizing she was stepping onto a stage where the stakes weren't lawn heights or mailbox colors but federal crimes, undercover operations, and lives on the line.